or watching on demand. Good luck.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christys. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm. You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christys tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel. It's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight. Huge Islamic gathering in London. Is this what assimilation looks like? Also tonight.
We're not having it. We're going to keep this fight up and we'll keep going until we get an agreement that we can support.
Labour has just given the green light for the socialist revolution. Plus,
our government should be the ones that are in prison right now. They should be the ones in the cells. They are committing war crimes. They should be arrested, not me.
a victory for GB News. We tipped police off about youth demand protesters and then they nicked them. Also, border chaos. Labour vowed to stop and search illegal immigrants, but a Border Force chief suddenly quits. And
our environment is going to be getting hotter and hotter. We're not going to be able to have the Winter Olympics. You know, it's as simple as that.
It's the woke Olympics. Team GB athletes are told to make political statements on the podium. Plus,
that's going to be laid out by Sue. She's got to do that as part of a leaving procedure, but there's nothing improper at all.
But you can't tell me.
Well, find out why Sue Gray is now in massive trouble. On my panel tonight is the director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, landlord and activist Adam Brooks, and author Rebecca Reid. Oh, and can you tell me what this woman is prattling on about, please?
Yeah, it's a pistol crossbow. I don't like firearms. This is a much safer alternative.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Do we have a problem with multiculturalism? Next.
Good evening. The news at just after 9 o'clock. I'm Polly Middlehurst. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has promised national renewal today after what he described as 14 years of chaos as MPs debated the King's speech in the House of Commons earlier on. King Charles officially opened the new session of Parliament, setting out the government's planned programme of new laws, and in total 40 separate pieces of new legislation were announced, with promises to get Britain building, deliver greater devolution and a plan to tackle organised immigration crime. The government also announced a new child poverty task force, but the Prime Minister's under increasing pressure for not scrapping the 2-child benefit cap. Sir Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak Both set out their intentions as the new session of Parliament began.
And we on this side of the House will hold them accountable for delivering on the commitments that they made to the British people. We will not oppose for the sake of it, but when we disagree with the government, it is our responsibility as the opposition to say so.
This government has been elected to deliver nothing less than national renewal, to stop the chaos of the past 14 years, turn the page on an era of politics as noisy performance, and return it to public service.
Meanwhile, the latest figures show inflation held at the Bank of England's 2% target last month. That's the lowest rate for 3 years. All eyes now are on whether or not the bank will cut interest rates over the coming months. The government says the data is welcome news, but prices are still high because of the economic chaos left by the Conservatives. Now, it's emerged that a boy has died in a young offenders institution in Scotland after the government promised to stop sending under-18s there. 17-year-old Jonathan Beadle died on Saturday at Polmont in Falkirk, having previously been in a secure children's unit. In March 2022, the Scottish government vowed that under-18s would no longer be sent to young offenders institutions. And just lastly, prisoners of war have been exchanged today following an agreement between Ukraine and Russia. 95 soldiers from each side were returned, the Ukrainian men appearing emotional as they left a coach, finally on home soil. If you're watching on television, you can see them getting out of the coach, wrapping flags around themselves and weeping as they touched the ground and hugged their counterparts. Well, President Volodymyr Zelensky says all of the freed prisoners were from the armed forces, and he took the opportunity to thank the United Arab Emirates for its help in facilitating the deal. It's the third swap in 7 weeks. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. More in an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Today was a great day for people who think diversity is our greatest strength. Central London was brought to a screeching halt so that some Muslims could celebrate Al-Shura Day. So the Metropolitan Police decided to close several major roads so a procession could march through the capital. They said officers are present to minimise disruption and deal with any incidents. OK, incidents like this? Should probably also point out at this stage that we contacted the Met Police and they told us that no arrests had been made. There appears to be quite a stark contrast here to how police sought to deal with people wanting to watch England play in the Euros final. They issued an antisocial behaviour order throughout the whole of the borough of Westminster, a huge area, which meant that groups of people gathering and drinking could essentially be arrested. So, just so we are clear, this stuff would be bad in Britain. But this stuff is good in Britain. Look, there's nothing wrong with religious celebrations, but does it just feel like maybe there are different rules for different groups of people? Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. We've got the Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. I'm also joined by businessman and activist Adam Brooks and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Mark, I'll start with you. I do wonder if there is a whiff of two-tier policing here. The Met have said that there were no arrests made, and I think there's at least one incident there where maybe they could have done.
It's a fair point. Look, I'm not particularly worried about the imagery you showed. Like, I'm not Muslim. I don't bow down to pray like that. I don't wear outfits like that. You did show one image of a chap atop Marble Arch tube station waving a flag. I'm wondering if that was an England supporter waving a flag on Sunday, whether he might have been hauled down and arrested for trespass. And the two-tier policing, both are fine. The answer to your monologue, Patrick, both are fine. That Islamic prayer is fine, and England fans watch England is fine. Here's what the Met Police said on Twitter yesterday. On Sunday. Please remember there are no outdoor screens showing the Euro 2024 final in central London. Many of the pubs are already full. That was at 5:41 p.m. If you were thinking of travelling in, perhaps consider other options and remember to plan your journey home. Now, appreciating that the pubs being full would not have been relevant to the Muslims, did they send out a similar tweet?
No.
So the issue for me is I want both to happen, football fans and Islamic prayer. The question I want the Met Police to answer is, are they treating both groups even-handedly? On the prima facie evidence, no.
No. I mean, it does come hot off the heels, doesn't it, of J.D. Vance saying his stuff about it was a joke, but, you know, about, oh, will Britain be an Islamist country under Labour? And, OK, all right, look, it was a religious festival and, you know, if it was a group of Christians praying in the street, then, I think we have to be tolerant of religious festivals and religious things like that. There's no quarrels about that. But Adam, I do think that the optics of it are quite stark, and I think that tourists might have been like, what the heck is this all about? And, you know, the road closures and things like our arterial routes at Oxford Street, it was Regent Street, you know, Marble Arch, you know, there seemed to be no qualms whatsoever about shutting those down on a work day as well.
Yeah, look, as you said, this isn't a weekend, this is a weekday. This affects the economy. Major roads, major tube stations shut because of this. Now, I'm not religious, but there's only 5% roughly of the population that are Muslim. Why are we allowing the shutting of roads and tube stations for a religious celebration? I wouldn't support that if it was Christian, Sikh, Buddhist or Hindu. I think that is outrageous. And just looking at that, if I was someone that was maybe up London and I didn't know what was going on, I'd feel quite intimidated by the loud noise and the large groups of people marching and whatever they was doing. Let's just remember as well, black cabs in London were not even allowed to show to have English flags on them. I think there's real mixed messages that we're sending. It's like our flag is not okay, religious flags perfectly fine, and I think that's the wrong message.
Do you think that's a sign, Rebecca, that assimilation or an integration is working or failing?
I think it's a sign that the general levels of policing needed to be different for religious celebrations than from non-religious ones. So the big concern with football is that everybody's drinking. As Mark pointed out, not a big problem with the Muslims, not boozers by trade. So they are not used to having to arrest people in that situation. Now, I don't think that guy should have been on top of the tube thing, and I think he makes everybody else look bad by doing it. But actually, probably the reason no arrests were made is because nobody did anything wrong. Now, the police in this country, I don't like the police. I would defund the police, and the police are rubbish. But I don't think that they are decidedly trying to avoid...
What else is, just to drag it back to that, I mean, obviously there is something wrong with standing on top of a tube station and waving a big flag like that. I mean, some people might think that that is a needless show of force.
I don't think it's a show of force. I think it's showing off. And I think if you get enough young men in one place, and that is all predominantly men, somebody will show off. That's kind of true of whether you're doing it for pride, whether you're doing it for any kind of religious situation, or whether you're doing it... If we had won the Euros, I imagine we would have had a similar... people going, we would have closed roads to make a demonstration.
No, we weren't allowed to be in central London.
I think if we'd won, we would have been allowed to.
Because this is the other aspect to this. So conceivably, taking this at face value, if a group of 5 or 6 lads wanted to watch the Euros final in a park on their phone and have a few beers, and they got a bit rowdy when England won the Euros, chance to be a fine thing, when we won the Euros, and a police officer had walked past at that time, they could have been arrested. But hundreds of thousands of people marching through the streets of London, flying an Islamic flag and all of that, that's fine. And that, to me, just seems, well, it's different, isn't it?
Well, here's the thing that I think we need to crack, because I'm sympathetic to what both Adam and Rebecca have said in different ways. I don't like these anti-social behaviour dispersal orders. I don't like preempting what might happen. It probably is true that people watching England on Sunday drank more alcohol than the Muslims who were in Hyde Park today. But that's not for the authorities to preempt. We live in a free country. You should be arrested if you do something wrong. Now, to Adam's point, and to yours, Patrick, about sort of, well, they're blocking up Oxford Street and all of the rest of it. This goes for all demonstrations, in my view. The Countryside Alliance,
but they're normally on a weekend.
All of the rest of it. OK, but, I mean, Oxford Street on the weekend...
Oxford Circus is more used to us at the weekend from the economy.
So the question is, if you want to run these sort of things, should you have to rent the land? Or do we allow them to do it for free?
I do also just wonder if there's a little bit of a blind spot amongst certain people here, OK? Because people... you know, intolerance is a bad thing, right? People see that certain groups of people, or they think, might be less tolerant than others. But if you just take the letter of really any fundamentalist religion, but in this case, it was a large group of people celebrating a Muslim festival, right? So you take the average view of that lot according to the Quran, etc. Well, what are their views on things like gay people, on women's rights? You know, there's obviously been huge issues at the moment when it comes to anti-Semitism as well, and there doesn't seem to be any consideration for any of that.
But again, that's kind of what Mark's saying, is that you can't do somebody for something they haven't done.
No one wants to raise it, though, do they?
But why would you raise it? If any of those people had said anything sexist or done anything sexist...
If you were a Jewish person today, walking through the middle of London, that might have felt a bit intimidating, I imagine. No?
Yeah, and look, I think going back, imagine that was Tommy Robinson on top of that Marble Arch station waving a big England flag.
Yeah, and for good reason. He has a criminal record. He's been arrested multiple times previously.
He would have been batoned.
Yeah, because he has a history of doing things that are... He's been arrested multiple times.
This is two-tier policing. That man should have been dragged down from the Marble Arch station.
He should have been asked to get down. He should have been asked to get down and told to get down. And if he refused to get down, then fine.
And the same should apply to Tommy Robinson.
Yes, absolutely. But if somebody is a known...
nationalist or patriotic crusade, and one of his people gets up on Marble Arch Station and waves the St George's flag, I would...
He should be asked to get down.
But we have seen time and time again.
Fine.
But we have seen a lot of very strong evidence that time and time again, one group of people, whether that's the pro-Palestinian brigade or whether it's the people that were out there today, and I accept, by the way, that it appears that there was just one or two incidents like that Marble Arch thing today. I don't think there was anything like the widespread disorder and criminality that we've seen at a lot of the pro-Palestine protests, but they are treated completely differently to a load of people who just want to go on to the march.
But they're behaving completely differently.
There's a lack of...
like Pride... OK, but let's use the example of a march I like. I love Pride. Now, you get arrests at Pride, or Notting Hill Carnival. I love Carnival. You get arrests there, right? Because people are smoking drugs, people are having fun.
You get... It's not because that, is it? It's not because having fun. It's because there's a lot of people with machetes there.
No, that's the difference. That's fun for some people, Patrick.
People fight each other with machetes, dealing and doing drugs. I mean,
absolutely. So the reason that it's heavily policed is because people do things there that are illegal. Now, that is also a non-white festival full of people who are not white, unsurprisingly. This is the same thing. Now, you don't get you're not saying it's two-tier policing between those two. There is no history of people praying for this specific festival causing crimes. There is a history at Notting Hill Carnival. That's why the policing is different.
Patrick, from what I can see, there was no suggestion these people were supporting Hamas or Hezbollah or, you know, being anti-Semitic on the face of it.
But they weren't outwardly doing so.
People wouldn't ask them. There was no one vox popping there.
No, but I
they're just praying.
Chance of destroy Israel or anything like that.
My main issue here is that for a religion that is only sort of followed by maybe 5% of the population, we are shutting major roads and major tube stations
it's more of London
to allow
than 5%.
Them to do this.
And
that is my issue with that. I think it's unnecessary and I think it's wrong.
But it's not 5% of London. It's more than that in London because more Muslims live in London. And also, I would say they probably shot less than 5% of London.
Well, look, it's privatise it. If they want to hire Hyde Park, pay the fee.
Look, it's an interesting topic. Again, I will say, you know, we went to the Met Police. As far as they're concerned, they're saying there was absolutely no criminality at this particular thing today. Or do you want to emphasise that? I know, and there were no arrests. I've said that a couple of times now, and you know, this is part of it. It's more of a Maybe an optics thing. Maybe some people feel uncomfortable with it. Maybe some people just need to get on board with it. But hey, it's certainly divided people, and it's divided us here, and it's good to have the conversation, I think. But anyway, still to come. As it's revealed that immigration cops will be given counter-terror-style powers to target small boat smuggling gangs, is Labour being clear enough about its plan to stop the boats? Reform MP Lee Anderson is live shortly. Plus, what's this woman going on about?
It's a pistol crossbow. I don't like firearms. This is a much safer alternative.
I'll reveal all, but first, are you ready for the woke Olympics? Team GB athletes have been told to make political statements and drive social change from the podium. But should they just stick to sport? Former Olympians Alex Story and Lisa Mason, they go head-to-head, and it's next.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, we've got quite an extraordinary story to talk to you about now, because a triple amputee war hero is launching a bid to become the first to sail across the Pacific Ocean non-stop, solo and unsupported.
Craig Wood was blown up as a teenager by the Taliban in Afghanistan, but now he's hoping to change the perception of disabled people and raise money for other limbless veterans like himself. And Craig joins us now. Morning.
So, Craig, you are extraordinary. You are planning to take up to 80 days to sail from La Paz in Mexico to Japan.
Yeah.
How many miles is that?
It'll be over 6,000.
Amazing.
Amazing. And it will take you how long?
The minimum it's going to take me is 60 days. It could be up to 80. Yeah.
And that's on your own. You've done plenty of this before, haven't you? You've done lots of solo sailing.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of solo sailing, but not as big as this. It is the world's biggest ocean, after all.
And why that particular route?
I wanted it to be a challenge, not just for me, but for anyone.
Right.
So any able-bodied person can look at this and go, wow, that is difficult.
Yeah.
And so that was the main drive. Then it's become a bigger thing than that now. Now I'm raising money for charity, and I can truly inspire people to change their perception on what is possible for disabled people.
And if you don't mind, can we ask you what happened in 2009 in Afghanistan? What were the circumstances of your injury?
I was on a normal routine foot patrol. About 5 metres in front of me, a commando IED was triggered. And subsequently, I became a triple amputee, both legs above the knee, left hand at the wrist, facial injuries, etc., etc.
The People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. Now, coming up, I'll be joined live by the Reform UK MP Lee Anderson to talk all things immigration. Have you heard? Apparently the latest policy to stop the boats is to stop and search people when they get here. But in other news, as British athletes are trained to use their fame for social change at the Paris Olympics, should they just stick to sport? It's time now for our head-to-head. So the chairwoman of UK Sport and former rower, Catherine Granger, wants our Paris athletes to emulate the likes of Taylor Swift and Marcus Rashford. She said athletes have found their voice and found a platform that they want to talk about, and that's something we should support. It can be sustainability, it can be accessibility, it can be gender rights. It's loads of different areas that are important in society. That's a really powerful thing. Well, it turns out that UK Sport have launched programmes that trains them to use their fame to drive social and cultural change. But look, hey, here's an idea. Should they just stick to sport and trying to win medals? Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say, at GBNews on Twitter. Make sure you go and vote in our poll. But going head-to-head on this, we've got a cracking panel here because it's two former Olympians. We've got former Olympic rower Alex Story and former Olympian and Commonwealth Games champion in gymnastics Lisa Mason. Thank you very much, both of you. Great to have you on the show. Look, Lisa, I'm going to start with you on this. Should our athletes really be standing on podiums and making, political gestures and trying to do all of this stuff, do you think?
I think if they're passionate about it, I think it's something that they should feel free to do. I was a very outspoken gymnast in my time. I think a lot of people can agree with that. But I don't think it should be something that's forced upon the athletes to do with their wokeness and pressurised into doing it. Leading up to the Olympics, athletes are always trained with media training and how to present themselves and talk about certain things and steer away from certain things. But I think if an athlete is genuinely, intrigued or passionate about something, I feel like they should have the right to talk about it. And I think it's very, what's the word I'm looking for, naive to think that just because you're an athlete, you don't have a mind to think or have your own opinion about political going-ons in the world.
OK. Alex, I'll bring you in now. I suppose the concern for some people might be it's only kind of one viewpoint that might get across there. You might see people there with the pride flag or the trans flag or something. You're not really going to get someone unfurling a Union Jack with the word "stop the boats" across the front of it, are you? It's almost like one kind of politics that we might end up seeing on the podium.
Well, yeah, I mean, as your guest says, an athlete is allowed to speak his mind. I think that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a setup that trains athletes, as Granger said, to speak on a variety of issues like sustainability, LGBT rights, women's rights. But as you say, there is no one saying we need a more Christian Britain or we need to bring back hanging or, that kind of these kinds of policies. But so I'm not suggesting that we should bring those back. But the point is that there is a definite tinge to what she was saying. And UK Sports is obviously going to be an organization that will try to politicize the athletes to try and get their point across. And the points that this organization is making is not in the interest of the athlete. The athlete should be concentrating on what he's doing, because if he fails at the Olympic Games, he'll be crushed for life. And if he makes an ass of himself, my apologies for this, because he doesn't know about the topics that he's talking about, in particular if it goes beyond the rhetorical slogans that he's been taught to say, then once his Olympic career finishes, he'll have no friends left, and he'll be a laughingstock. So it's very, very difficult and dangerous to try and do this with athletes.
All right, Lisa, I wonder whether or not the athletes might be setting themselves up to fail. So Marcus Rashford's a good example of this, actually, which is that, he did his whole feed hungry kids thing, got a load of applause for that and a load of plaudits for it. But his actual performances on the football pitch took a bit of a nosedive. He wasn't at the Euros recently, and actually it's backfired to an extent, because now the easy way to get at Marcus Rashford and criticise him is he should be focusing more on his football than he is on his politics. And I'm just wondering if athletes really need that in their careers,
I mean, I think the reality is things are very different from when myself and yourself were athletes. And I think, social media is so in your face now. You can't help but understand or see what's going on in the world. As I said, I think it's really just, it really frustrates me when people go, well, you're an athlete. You shouldn't focus on anything else but what you're doing. I mean, the grand scheme of things, yeah, that's great if you take away, social media and the rest of the world from everything, but we're still people, and we still care about things that affect us and affect our communities. And if you know, we are passionate. As I said, if you're passionate about something and you want to do something for your community or stand up for something that you believe should be stood up for, just because you're kicking a football or flipping down a track or, you know, doing whatever sport you're doing, I don't think that you should sit there and go, oh, it's not my problem. It's not my problem, because ultimately, you know, we are role models and people do look up to us. And, you know, I do think it's a great platform for people to speak their mind. And, I've got to apologise because I can barely hear, you know, what you'd said earlier on because my earpiece is not working, so...
That's all right. Don't worry. You absolutely got the gist of it. Alex, I will come back to you on this. And, by the way, I am in no way referring to Lisa when I say this. But I do wonder, Alex, if there is a little bit of a degree of narcissism with some of the athletes, right? Which is people pay money or tune in because they want to see people excel at the Olympic standard at whatever sporting discipline it is that those people take part in. They do not really care what their views on net zero are. Do they have to ram that down our throats?
No, but that's the point. I think, as your guest says, I mean, I'm interested in all sorts of different subjects, in particular, you know, culture, politics, economics, all of that. And you can, as an athlete, be a couple of things at the same time. But when you get to the Olympic Games, the only thing that really matters is the flag that you represent and the medal that you try to win. And that's the only thing that determines whether you'll be famous or not in the future. You can have 1 or 2 or 3 different medals. And after that, once you've established yourself as a great athlete, then you can go and study certain topics and you can become a real force for change. But the force for change could be in all sorts of different topics. I, for instance, am a traditionalist, so I'm trying to fight for traditional values. But what I got from the Olympic Games is the fact that I got discipline as the key driver for me to perform in all sorts of disciplines. One of the things that you don't want to do is get somebody at the age of 17, 18, get into a quagmire, a field of politicized world on Twitter, whatever it might be, that takes him away from his core talent, which is his sports. The thing that you can do with an adolescent who's going into the Olympic Games is to take him off Twitter, to get him to focus on his sport and to become the greatest in his sport. That's the key. Then after that, he can become great. Steve Raygrave, for instance, got 5 Olympic gold medals. We still speak about him because he won every single Olympic Games he went to from 1984 to 2000. That's how you speak to people.
Okay.
Then you can take whatever topic you want, but be good at what you do.
Yeah, all right. Look, both of you, thank you very, very much. We've definitely got both sides of that. So, as Alex Story, there, former Olympic rower and former Olympian and Commonwealth Games champion in gymnastics, Lisa Mason, who also did do her best a good couple of years ago now to try to teach me gymnastics. There is a horrific old clip on GB News of that, which anyone, if you fancy a laugh and want to be put off your dinner, you can go and watch that. But who do you agree with? As British athletes are trained to use their fame for social change at the Paris Olympics. Should they just stick to sport? So Spade on X says maybe politics has become the new sport. Mike on Your Say says they will only be allowed to use their platform for woke ideology. Imagine if one of them started talking about immigration. Well, quite, yeah. Eric says, what a stupid, offensive idea. Let sportsmen and women do what they do best and concentrate on competing and winning in what is a difficult and competitive atmosphere in the eyes of the whole world. Keep this BS and propaganda strictly out of it. In fact, forbid such things. Well, OK, your verdict is now in. So 95% of you think that British athletes should just stick to sport. 5% of you say they shouldn't. I do suspect, by the way, that is largely driven by the idea that people wonder whether or not the kind of causes that they would choose to make a virtue of, whether it's climate change or any of those kind of things, might not necessarily be causes that, people would particularly want to see rammed down their throats at the Olympics. But coming up, Keir Starmer's controversial Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, is in hot water after she went rogue from Cabinet to push through, and we're not joking now, a £310 million stadium in Belfast. That is Sue Gray. Hopefully they name it after her. Some have been quick to point out the connections to Sinn Féin, including DUP MP Sammy Wilson. And he's live with us shortly. But next, Reform's Red Wall Rottweiler Lee Anderson is live to talk about Labour's flimsy immigration plan and who Reform would fear as the next Tory leader. If anyone, don't go anywhere.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Good evening to you. Tomorrow, fine with sunny spells and a bit warmer than today across most of England and Wales. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, things will be a little different. There's high pressure sitting across England and Wales. Low pressure and weather fronts just eking in from the west, springing cloud and patchy rain at the moment across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. But that rain's going to pep up overnight. It could turn heavy for a time across the west of Northern Ireland and along the west coast of Scotland. A few showers for North Wales maybe, but for most of England, Wales, southern and eastern Scotland, a dry night. Quite a warm night. Temperatures holding up in some towns and cities at 15 or 16 degrees. On to Thursday, and a dull, damp start, certainly for Northern Ireland and western Scotland. But in the south, mostly fine. Could be some morning fog patches around. They may take a couple of hours to clear away, but generally plenty of sunshine across the south. A bit more cloud in West Wales, northwest England, 1 or 2 showers here, and a dull, damp morning for Northern Ireland. And a good part of Scotland seeing cloud and outbreaks of rain. Maybe parts of the east coast escaping largely dry, but even here a few showers may drift up as we go through the morning. So it's a bit of a north-south split with the weather, certainly to start with. I'm hopeful that parts of southern and eastern Scotland will actually turn a bit drier through the morning and stay largely fine. Some brighter skies likely to develop across the Murray coast through the afternoon. Northern Ireland, western Scotland do stay pretty dull and damp. Most of England and Wales seeing plenty of hazy and pretty warm sunshine. 28 in the capital, many places in the mid-20s across the south. By Friday, that heat could build further. We may reach 30 Celsius across the southeast in the sunshine. Again, quite a bit of cloud at times for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but generally a drier day for Northern Ireland. It'll be late in the day before this rain starts to creep in. 1 or 2 showers elsewhere, but most places set fair. As I said, hotter still with maybe 30 Celsius in the southeast.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. Now, I am joined by the Reform UK MP, Lee Anderson. So, Keir Starmer has shown the first signs of action, if you want to call it that, on his small boats plan. We can take a little listen now to the moment that it was mentioned in the King's speech.
My government will seek to strengthen the border and make streets safer. A bill will be introduced to modernise the asylum and immigration system, establishing a new border security command and delivering enhanced counter-terror powers to tackle organised immigration crime.
OK, so Starmer's Border Security Command will treat smuggling gangs like terrorists and allow them to use security service intelligence to go after them. They will also be allowed to, now get ready people, this is radical, ramp up stop and search at the border, and new offences will be created for those advertising small boats crossings. Lee Anderson joins me now. Lee, I imagine it'll be really reassuring to everybody to know that if somebody arrives here illegally across the channel carrying a machete, a firearm and a load of drugs, that they'll be stopped and searched before they're put in a migrant hotel.
I tell you what, Patrick, the people smugglers in France must be quaking in their boots at the sight of Starmer and the rest of the front. But look, it's ridiculous, absolute nonsense. I mean, the Rwanda plan was bad enough. There is no deterrent at the moment. These people are going to come over in their thousands throughout the summer. They're going to be picked up in the Channel. They're going to be ferried to the coast. They're then going to be taken to hotels. They're going to be processed, put through the broken asylum system, and 90% of them will have their asylum claims passed. They will never leave this country. Starmer is an absolute disgrace to this country. And I tell you what, Patrick, what does he actually mean when he says he's going to smash the gangs? It's pathetic.
Well, they're saying, you know, these new counter-terror laws, they're going to go after the criminal gangs throughout Europe and that will have a big impact. Of course, unfortunately for Sir Keir Starmer, one of the major elements of that is closer ties with our European friends. And Ursula von der Leyen has snubbed him at the first possible opportunity recently. So it doesn't look as though that's going to happen anytime soon. But Lee, the other aspect of this that nobody seems to be talking about is that if people continue to come across the Channel, which they are, and we are now allowing them all to claim asylum, which we are, and a load of those will be granted asylum, then they're going to have to live somewhere. And Labour are talking about shutting down the migrant hotels, which does beg the question, Lee, is all of this new social housing that they're talking about going to be full of illegal immigrants?
Well, listen, Patrick, I mean, I think you're a newly married man. You've probably got a couple of bedrooms spare in your house or apartment. No. I don't know where you live at the moment. The good news is that you can put some of these migrants up in your house. It's ridiculous. You know, we've seen in the parks throughout, not just this country, Patrick, but in Northern Ireland as well. These camps are setting up, these tent cities are going to be set up all over the country at the moment. It's frightening. It's scary. We do not know who we are allowing in this country at the moment. It is absolutely shocking. You know what? The Tory party was bad enough, but the Labour Party are going to open the borders, they're going to welcome them in, and they'll be living absolutely everywhere.
All right. Well, what I will say is, you know, Reform stood on a ticket of, we are going to be the opposition. We're going to lead a people's revolt. Well, we've heard the King's speech today. We know what Keir Starmer's doing. What are Reform going to do to stop this, then?
Well, listen, Patrick, there's 5 of us, but we have more influence and more fight and more heart in our bodies than the rest of the 200 on the opposition benches. It's ridiculous. Seriously, Patrick, you know, for the past 3 or 4 years, I've been banging on about the illegal migrants, legal migration. Finally, the country's waking up. We look at the Labour Party, Patrick, at the moment. Keir Starmer is the least popular Labour leader of all time, even Jeremy Corbyn.
Right, fine, but what is the plan now then, Lee? No, seriously, go on, because what is the plan now? You've got Labour's, the Tories are in disarray, so a lot of people watching this now are going to be thinking, well, you know, maybe they voted for Nigel, maybe they voted for you, and they think, right, come on, we need to see Reform standing there on those benches, giving it to Labour on this. So what are you going to be saying? Just turn the votes back?
Patrick, you're being ridiculous. We've only been here a week. We've got 4.1 million voters behind us. There's probably another couple of million voters that wanted to vote for us. You're being ridiculous. We are the People's Army. We're going to march forward and represent the silent majority in this country. I tell you what, you lot on GB News better watch out.
All right. Well, I mean, yeah, OK. I suppose from what I'm taking from that is that the Reform policy remains the same, which is you would turn the votes back and maybe you'd try and make that case to Keir Starmer. But, Lee, I know that you care deeply about your constituency. I've been to do an entire show from your constituency in Ashfield. I do wonder, though, Lee, whether or not the same can be said for Nigel Farage, right? He's announced he's flying out to America this week to support his mate Donald Trump. But, Lee, you know, there are starting to be increased noises, especially on social media, about whether or not he's going to be spending that much time in Clacton. Do you think he will? Do you think he should?
Patrick, you're talking nonsense again. I tell you what, Patrick, you're a great presenter. I think you need to go and get a job on LBC, because that's where it's going with this nonsense. Patrick is going to be a great representative of Clacton. He's going to be a great leader in the House of Parliament. I tell you what, Nigel Farage is exactly what this country needs at the moment, and he is a phenomenon. So, listen, Patrick, I've heard there's some vacancies at LBC. You're a close rival for James O'Brien. You need to get your head over there and I'll come and see you next week.
I think with respect, Lee, you've accused me of being ridiculous a couple of times. It's possibly a bit more ridiculous to say that I am similar to James O'Brien. But finally, Lee, look, your former colleague Priti Patel, she's thrown her hat into the ring now to be the next Conservative leader. This is actually how former Tory MP Miriam Cates reacted to that last night on this show.
Straight talking, she's very energetic, she's got an amazing smile, she's got lots of friends in Parliament, but as I said, I'm not going to come down in favour on any particular candidate. But
yeah, I wonder whether or not Priti Patel might burst reform's bubble a little bit. I mean, she's quite aligned, isn't she, really, to what you guys stand for? How do you see that go?
I think so, Patrick. I'm not sure an amazing smile is quite going to cut it. I think, the Tory party, they need to choose a correct leader. I suspect they won't. I think they'll probably choose something like Tom Tugendhat, who actually would be a dream ticket for me. I tell you what, if they choose Tom or somebody like that, one of the wets in the Tory party, I'm going to order that new extension on my house.
You're going to what, sorry?
Order that new extension on my house. I'll be quizzing.
Oh, right, OK, all right. Why do you hate Tom Tugendhat?
I don't hate Tom. I get on really, really well with Tom. He's a good man, but he's a Liberal. He's a Liberal, Patrick. He's a wet. He's everything that's wrong with the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party, right from number 10 a few months back, right through to CCHQ, need to get a grip. They've not been Conservative. The country is crying out for a centre-right party, and the Conservative Party at the moment have not been that.
But I get that, but I suppose it does beg the question, if they do decide to go for Priti Patel, then that is probably a problem for reform, right?
Not really. I love Priti. She's a good friend of mine, but, look at Priti's track record, why she's been in government. What is it?
OK. The last thing I'll just ask you, Ali, is if Suella Braverman gets shunned by her own MPs here, if she decides she wants to run for the leadership or whatever, or she gets ostracised a bit for some of her comments in the Tory party, you went through something quite similar. You made your comments about Sadiq Khan, etc. You ended up going for reform. You won at the election. So, credit to you. Do you think there's a place in reform for Suella Braverman?
Listen, Suella Braverman is a good friend of mine. She ticks all my boxes, and probably all the boxes of Reform UK. I suspect, Patrick, she's going to go at some stage for the leadership of the Conservative Party. I would love to have her on board with the Reform UK Party.
OK, all right, so the door's open, I take it?
It's wide open.
Interesting. All right, Lee, thank you very much, and great to have you on the show. I'll see you soon. It's Reform UK MP Lee Anderson. Coming up, after the policy was conspicuously absent from the King's speech, should all foreign criminals be deported immediately? Keir Starmer's record in this area isn't good. Now, I'm going to tackle that at 10. Plus, what's going on here? But next, as Keir Starmer's controversial Chief of Staff, Sue Gray, is accused of going absolutely feral to try and secure a bailout for a £310 million stadium in Belfast, has this unelected former civil servant got too much power? And quite frankly, who on earth does she think she is? Some have pointed to her connections with Sinn Féin, including DUP MP Sammy Wilson. And he's live next. Stay tuned.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle has reportedly finished filming her new show for Netflix. It aims to celebrate the joys of cooking, gardening, entertaining and friendship.
Yeah, this comes after Prince Harry's Netflix documentary, The Heart of Invictus, failed to hit the right note with viewers, missing out on the top 10 in the streaming charts.
So, will this next venture be a success? Well, joining us now is royal commentator Kinsey Schofield.
I know I've talked to the both of you about Meghan Markle potentially running for president, so this feels like a bit of a dud to go from Meghan Markle running for president to Meghan Markle's Netflix series about friendship and cooking. So she's wrapped this recent show. They rented a home near hers in Montecito, so that as their cooking set. And they're saying that this is really make or break for Harry and Meghan when it comes to their Netflix contract.
Do you think, Kinsey, it's fair to say that Meghan Markle has proved to be commercially a bit of a damp squib? Even in America, her native homeland, she's kind of Oprah without the audience when it comes to the cooking. Also, is she kind of, do you think... They saw her as the golden ticket, didn't they, to unlimited revenue, unlimited audiences, and it just hasn't happened.
Look, I think Meghan is a beautiful woman, and I do think she's talented, but I think how you treat people is incredibly important. And not only was she rumored to have been cruel inside Kensington Palace with several bullying allegations, but here in the States, Archwell Productions, their audio section, their scripted section, they've gone through several employees. And I think it's a reflection on the way that people are treated there. And I think as a viewer, you might get that. You might feel that way. And maybe that is where the appeal has been lost.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
All right, welcome back. Coming up, should foreign criminals be automatically kicked out of the country? It appears that Keir Starmer's bottled it. But first, the Prime Minister's controversial Chief of Staff, we all know her, don't we, Sue Gray, has found herself in hot water over claims that she subverted cabinet ministers in an attempt to secure extra funding to cover the cost of a rebuilding project in Belfast. The former civil servant is said to have angered ministers by personally dominating negotiations for a bailout of Casement Park, which is due to host matches at the 2028 Euros. Now, obviously, she's supposed to have quite close personal links in Northern Ireland, was running the country's finance department between 2018 and 2021, and having run a pub at the height of the Troubles. Well, a civil service source lashed out at Keir Starmer's right-hand woman, telling The Times it's constitutionally improper. Well, quite. I just don't quite understand why on earth she's involved in the multi-million-pound regeneration project involving a football stadium in Belfast when she's supposed to be the Chief of Staff. But hopefully someone can clear it up. Maybe the Democratic Unionist Party MP, Sammy Wilson. Sammy, thank you very much. What on earth is Sue Gray doing getting involved in a hundreds of millions of pounds project to rebuild a stadium?
Well, I don't know if the report in the paper this morning is true. What I do know is that there had been a rather strange position adopted by the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Hilary Benn, when he said that his first priority for Northern Ireland was to ensure that Casement Park was financed and went ahead, despite the fact that we've got a crisis in the health service, we've got a crisis in education, etc. He felt that the priority for spending money should be on this stadium. And, you know, if this is true that Sue Gray has been promoting this, it's going to be the first major political scandal of the new government, that someone who is in a powerful position used that position to promote the pet project of political pals in Sinn Féin. Now, that's a very, very serious thing. And, it's not just that the Treasury say this is not value for money and therefore ministers would be obliged to listen to that. But also, it's not even a priority for the Northern Ireland Assembly, so she's interfering constitutionally in the priorities of the Northern Ireland Assembly. They have set aside money for the refurbishment of Casement Park, the same as they did for a football stadium and for a rugby stadium. GAA now want over £300 million additional money spent
Can
on
I
that.
just ask Sammy, sorry to cut across you, but it's important this. I mean, are we talking taxpayers' money here? I mean, are we talking, you know, Sue Gray off of the old Partygate report, who miraculously found a way into the Labour Party despite being politically impartial for her entire life. Her son also happens to now be a Labour MP, of course. It may be involved in £310 million worth of public money being spent on rebuilding a derelict Belfast stadium. It's a bit odd, isn't it?
It would. That's exactly right. It is public money. It's taxpayers' money, and there are far, far higher priorities. And of course, don't forget, this is to build a stadium to host 5 football matches. £310 million for 5 football matches. And here's the other issue, of course. Given the time scale and the requirements from FIFA, the stadium might not even be built in time. Now, once you go down that route, then you open the door for all kinds of extra costs because, of course, builders may well have to work overtime. They may have to get supplies from more expensive sources. So £310 million could turn into £100 million or more. And this is how serious this is. And rather than interfere in this way, it should be left up to the minister in the Northern Ireland Assembly who's responsible for this, and he should be left to make the decision about what money goes. There's a commitment made. He's quite ready to make the commitment for that money, make it available to the GAA, but not for this enormously inflated figure to host 5 matches potentially.
But does Keir Starmer not have to answer now, quite urgently, why his Chief of Staff has maybe got her fingerprints all over a £310 million taxpayer-funded rebuilding of a derelict Belfast stadium? I mean, sorry, but forgive me, but you know, the contrast here between the kind of stuff that Sue Gray had to investigate when it came to the old parties at Downing Street, right, versus, you know, an allegation of this size. I mean, does he not have to answer this? What's going on? I mean, there may be nothing, Sammy, but it'd be nice to have some answers, wouldn't it?
I guarantee that if Sue Gray had had to investigate this and found that this was the case, she'd have written the most damning report. I don't know if any of this is true. What I do know is that the Labour Party seems to have adopted a strange priority and given huge backing to this white elephant project. Who's influencing that, I don't know, but the Prime Minister certainly at this early stage in his administration should try and make sure that there aren't people behind the scenes who are seeking to undermine ministers, undermine Treasury decisions and undermine constitutionally the Northern Ireland Assembly by promoting personal projects.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I suppose. Sorry, Sammy, we're going to be very quick on this. But why could you? What would there be to gain out of doing this?
I think the only thing to gain out of it would be to keep Sinn Féin sweet, and sometimes that seems to be the default position of the Northern Ireland office and of government, because Sinn Féin present a big threat to them, and therefore they've got to keep them happy.
All right. Sammy, look, thank you very much for your time this evening. Always great to have you on the show. Sammy Wilson there, who's the DUP MP. Look, Downing Street sources have told The Times no decision has been made on this stadium and said that it was overblown to suggest that Mrs Gray was personally dominating negotiations. I just don't understand why she's involved at all. Chief of Staff... Maybe I'm missing something here. But I think it is a bit odd. Coming up, is Labour right to announce plans to renationalise the railways? Will it plunge us back into the chaos of the 1970s? You also have to bear in mind the fact that they're doing more to, as they see it, bolster workers' rights. But hang on a minute, is that not just putting us all at the mercy of Mick Lynch and co? But next, Keir Starmer. He's got a really dodgy record when it comes to deporting foreign criminals. In fact, he's actively campaigned against it. And a bill set to fast-track their removal was surprisingly omitted from today's King's Speech. Is Sir Softy making Britain more unsafe yet again? This is Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News, but now it's your weather with Alex Deakin.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Good evening to you. Tomorrow, fine with sunny spells and a bit warmer than today across most of England and Wales. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, things will be a little different. There's high pressure sitting across England and Wales. Low pressure and weather fronts just eking in from the west, bringing cloud and patchy rain at the moment across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. But that rain's going to pep up overnight. It could turn heavy for a time across the west of Northern Ireland and along the west coast of Scotland. A few showers for North Wales maybe, but for most of England, Wales, southern and eastern Scotland, a dry night. Quite a warm night. Temperatures holding up in some towns and cities at 15 or 16 degrees. On to Thursday, and a dull, damp start, certainly for Northern Ireland and western Scotland. But in the south, mostly fine. Could be some morning fog patches around. They may take a couple of hours to clear away, but generally plenty of sunshine across the south. A bit more cloud in West Wales, northwest England, 1 or 2 showers here, and a dull, damp morning for Northern Ireland. And a good part of Scotland seeing cloud and outbreaks of rain. Maybe parts of the east coast escaping largely dry, but even here a few showers may drift up as we go through the morning. So it's a bit of a north-south split with the weather, certainly to start with. I'm hopeful that parts of southern and eastern Scotland will actually turn a bit drier through the morning and stay largely fine. Some brighter skies likely to develop across the Murray coast through the afternoon. Northern Ireland, western Scotland do stay pretty dull and damp. Most of England and Wales seeing plenty of hazy and pretty warm sunshine. 28 in the capital, many places in the mid-20s across the south. By Friday, that heat could build further. We may reach 30 Celsius across the southeast in the sunshine. Again, quite a bit of cloud at times for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but generally a drier day for Northern Ireland. It'll be late in the day before this rain starts to creep in. 1 or 2 showers elsewhere, but most places set fair. As I said, hotter still with maybe 30 Celsius in the southeast.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours. It's our biggest cash prize of the year so far, and you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
Oh, I can't believe this.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh, you shocked me. I never won a penny in my life.
If I was there, I'd buy you a drink.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight, Starmer has form for wanting to keep violent foreign criminals in Britain. Do you think he's changed? And
we're not having it. We're going to keep this fight up and we'll keep going until we get an agreement that we can support.
Has Labour just kick-started a socialist strike Starmageddon? Also,
been arrested today for public nuisance, for conspiracy to cause a public nuisance.
Now you're going to be using your...
All I attempted to do, wanted to go and do, was wave a Palestinian flag at the state opening of Parliament.
Yeah, good. A victory for GB News. We tipped police off about youth demand protesters, and then they actually nicked them. Good to see that they're taking it well.
Our government should be the ones that are in prison right now. They should be the ones in the cells. They are committing war crimes. They should be arrested, not me.
Oh, my heart bleeds. On my panel tonight is the Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. I've got landlord and activist Adam Brooks and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Oh, yes, OK. And what is this woman prattling on about?
Yeah, it's a pistol crossbow. I don't like firearms. This is a much safer alternative.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Starmer deporting foreign criminals. Do me a favour. Next.
The latest GB News at just after 10 o'clock. I'm Polly Middlehurst, and the main story, the Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer promised today national renewal for the country after 14 years of what he described as chaos. MPs debated the King's speech as well in the House of Commons later. King Charles officially opened the new session of Parliament, setting out the government's planned programme of new laws. In total, 40 pieces of new legislation were announced, with promises to get Britain building, deliver greater devolution and a plan to tackle organised immigration crime. The government also announced a new child poverty task force, but the Prime Minister's facing pressure over not scrapping the two-child benefit cap. Sir Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak both set out their intentions as the new session of Parliament began.
And we on this side of the House will hold them accountable for delivering on the commitments that they made to the British people. We will not oppose for the sake of it, but when we disagree with the government, it is our responsibility as the opposition to say so.
This government has been elected to deliver nothing less than national renewal, to stop the chaos of the past 14 years, turn the page on an era of politics as noisy performance, and return it to public service.
Now, a former Army general has admitted disgraceful conduct of an indecent kind after being accused of sexual assault. James Roddis pleaded guilty to the lesser charge at a military court in Wiltshire, which heard how the complainant indicated she was content with the count description. Roddis was made an MBE and also earned 2 Queen's commendations for his service. He'll be sentenced in September. Now, in the United States, one of Donald Trump's former Republican rivals has offered him her backing in a display of unity at the party's convention. Take a listen.
Donald Trump has my strong endorsement, period.
That is Nikki Haley, the first Indian American to serve in a presidential cabinet, who once described the former US President Trump as unhinged, but she's now telling voters Mr. Trump has her endorsement. Donald Trump, meanwhile, has been pictured getting a stage walkthrough and rehearsing ahead of tomorrow's keynote speech at the Republican National Convention in Wisconsin. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's been continuing his campaign. He's been speaking in Texas, promising to ban assault rifles, in particular the AR-15 used in the attempt on Donald Trump's life at the weekend. And just lastly, a heat health alert has been issued for parts of England, with temperatures set to hit 30 degrees Celsius on Friday. The UK Health Security Agency alerts cover East Midlands, East England, London and the South East from tomorrow right through to Saturday. It warns that expected hot weather may impact the health and social care sector and has urged people to check on their neighbours. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Where was the stuff about deporting foreign criminals in the King's speech? It was briefed out yesterday that there was going to be a fast-track deportation of foreign prisoners to free up prison space and get wrong-uns out of Britain. But it looks like Sir Softy has bottled it. We've had Shabana Mahmood saying this about why Labour are going to release prisoners early.
We could see looters running amok, smashing in windows, robbing shops and setting neighbourhoods alight. In short, if we fail to act now, we face the collapse of the criminal justice system.
All right, well, there were 10,422 foreign nationals in jails in England and Wales at the end of March this year, up from 10,148 at the same point last year. So that represents about 12% of all prisoners. Now, each one cost the taxpayer about £47,000 a year to accommodate, feed, rehabilitate. That's a total cost of apparently nearly 500 million quid a year. That's nothing was said about it today. It's weird, isn't it? Could it be because Suella Braverman pointed out that under existing laws, Labour wouldn't actually be able to deport these people? People like Nigerian rapist Akindoyin Kinshipe, who escaped deportation after European judges ruled that he had a right to a private life in Britain. I mean, there is also the possibility that Sir Keir Starmer doesn't actually want to deport these people. Just weeks before taking over as Labour leader, he signed a letter calling for 50 dangerous offenders not to be deported on a flight to Jamaica. Several of them, shock horror, went on to re-offend. But he's not sorry about that.
Do you now regret that? And would you like to say sorry to their victims?
Well, Jack, look, what I'd say is this. That I think most people are fed up to the back teeth with a government that is seeking to blame everybody else but themselves for the problems in relation to crime. If there's a problem with our asylum and deportation system, then ask yourself who broke it.
You know, arguably the problem with it was that people kept trying to block the deportations, but Labour MPs also stopped the deportation of Ernesto Elliott, who went on to kill a man with a machete. We have loads of these people still here. It's reported today that loads of violent foreign criminals have just come to Britain to avoid justice in their own countries. So the likes of Krzysztof Strzelecko, who's suspected of leading an armed criminal group, is wanted in Poland to face charges of drug trafficking and an axe murder. His extradition was ordered by a district judge in Britain in May. Apparently, he's not actually appealed this extradition, but he is still yet to be removed. Of course, there's very little to stop more coming in now, isn't there? Labour's border plans are in complete meltdown. Today, the head of the Illegal Migration Operations Command just suddenly quit. And one of Labour's big plans to get tough on illegals is, just going to check my notes on this one, increase stop and search when they get off the boats. Right. Well, it looks like Labour might be soft on letting foreign criminals in, and even softer on kicking them out. Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. I am joined by the Director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood. I have got landlord and activist Adam Brooks and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Mark, has Keir Starmer completely bottled this? Does he not actually care about deporting foreign prisoners? It would free up a lot of space.
He's certainly bottled it. Whether he cares, I can't speak to, Patrick. Look, it seems to me we've got to be honest about our prison system. It is overcrowded. I think it's preposterous, by the way, that we announce sentences of 4 years, 8 years or whatever, and it's automatic, basically, that you're out after 50% of that time. That's going to fall to 40%. We also kid ourselves that prison is about rehabilitation. It partly is, but mainly it's about keeping dangerous people off the streets. And it seems to me that we don't need to provide that service to foreign nationals. If you have broadly committed a crime here, you are no longer welcome here, and in all normal circumstances we will send you home. There are some exceptions to that. I wouldn't want to catch a North Korean terrorist and then send them back to North Korea, because they'd be celebrated and feted upon their arrival. But broadly speaking, if you have committed a crime here and you are not a British citizen,
I think people are more concerned about the Polish axe murderers, aren't they, really?
Exactly.
Or the Jamaican machete wielding
But if you
murderer.
I find this a really strange argument, because if I were assaulted by a non-British national here and they were going to be deported, the likelihood of being able to assure that they were going to be tried and serve time in their original country is tiny.
I really do think it's so once they've been in prison here
and served their time fully,
why don't we just deport them
afterwards? People who are naturalised to start with or otherwise.
People who are
foreign nationals. The people who have citizenship or people who don't have citizenship here.
No, if you've got citizenship, you stay in Britain.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, I don't really care.
If you're Polish,
I'm being quite straightforward about this, genuinely. I'm not trying to trip anyone up here. If you are a foreign national in a British prison, having committed a crime here, and we're talking about the fact that our prisons are so overcrowded that we're going to have to release people back out onto the streets, why aren't we just deporting these people?
But let's remember, we've got no prison places now. We are releasing violent offenders, burglars, thieves, robbers, that have done just 40% of their sentence. Now, that's endangering people further, in my opinion, and letting people off of their crimes. Now, the King said something today on behalf of the government. He said, we seek to strengthen the borders and make our streets safer. So finally, is that Labour admitting that importing people that we don't know, causing crimes and violently attacking people, are actually making us unsafe? I've sat on this settee for years now saying that we do not know who is in this country and committing crimes. We've had terrorists, gangsters, rapists and paedophiles. We don't know who half of them are.
I don't think anyone ever pretended that we didn't think there were some bad people coming. We just don't think people are inherently bad for
It's
coming.
even worse than Adam says. This is the scenario in which we have identified the wrong uns. So even if you've got a whole load of people coming in and you presume innocence, these are the people who have now been found guilty of some sort of crime that leads to incarceration, and even then we can't deal with it.
But what I think is interesting is that this was briefed out. So yesterday and then this morning, that this was really almost definitely going to be part of the King's speech.
And it isn't.
And it isn't. And Suella Braverman tweeted out about the fact that, this is a nice idea, but what Keir Starmer's going to find is that with our existing framework of law, you can't actually just get rid of these people. And I wonder how Labour's going to deal with this, because these are the kind of things that Labour, quite a few Labour MPs, including at times the now Prime Minister, have campaigned about, to keep certain people in this country. And if they now find out that they want to get rid of them, and that's a big if, by the way, if they want to get rid of them and they can't, frankly, I mean, they've only got themselves to blame, Rebecca, haven't they?
Well, I think the reason, I would imagine, I'm speculating, but I imagine the reason that it came out of the thing today is that they don't like to say they're going to do something unless they're pretty sure they actually can. Because if you say you're going to and then you don't, people can hold it against you. So I imagine what's happening right now is that Keir is a pretty impressive legal brain. Even if you don't think he's a good leader in other ways, he knows the law inside out. So I imagine a lot of work is being done to try and work out whether we can find a legal way to do this before we announce it.
Well, but the reason you can't find a legal way is that we're in ECHR and we have the Human Rights Act.
Which he's going to have
to admit. It is likely that not only Keir Starmer, with his no doubt immaculate legal brain, but government lawyers would have said, we cannot do this within the present framework.
But they're probably making...
Suella is 100% right. Now, we can have an argument about whether you want to change that framework. I do. But the Labour government does not. And if you don't change that framework, you can't put this in the King's speech.
I don't think... I agree that's why it's not in the speech, but I also think they're probably examining all the options without leaning into the culture war of...
Well, that's what Rishi did
screw
with
Europe,
Rwanda,
let's leave, but trying to have a proper grown-up conversation about it.
I'm not sure it's a culture war when it's actually people's lives at play. And Adam, you know, this has come off the back. So this was admitted today for, I think, the quite obvious reason that we've all really identified, which is that under our current legal system, it is pretty obvious now to Sir Keir and everybody else that we can't actually deport these violent foreign thugs, OK? And you couple that with the fact that there was a Border Force chief that's just stood down today. Their preferred target to be the new head of the Small Boats Command, or whatever they're calling it now, doesn't want it. OK, so that's not happened. We've already pulled out of Rwanda. They're now saying, all right, well, what we'll do is we'll increase stop and search when they get here. OK, fine. But as we've just identified, someone conceivably could land in Dover with a machete, some explosives and some drugs, and we would not be able to deport them. And I don't see what you can do about that.
No, look, what's fine? This is... Suella Braverman must sit back and think, thank God this is all coming to light now, because she was right. You know, and the Labour Party attacked the government on their rhetoric and that, but it's now coming to fruition. They cannot do what they want to do. And I don't actually believe that Keir Starmer does want to deport these criminals as before.
Why would he want criminals? Why would he want people...
Why did he stop deportation flights of violent criminals that then went on to murder someone?
In that specific case, I believe it was because he was an anti-death penalty campaigner and that person would have been put to death in their own country, and he very deeply believes that the death penalty is wrong.
Death on the streets over here.
Let's also remember...
The best option, I think, would be to close women's prisons. So there are only currently currently 3,062 women in prison in this country, as opposed to 77,000 men. And the vast majority of them are for non-violent crimes. So you don't really need women's prisons, and then you free up a whole load of space. Well, she'd be in a wing.
Rose West have gone?
They would be in wings of Belmarsh.
And what message does that send out to society, that women can commit crime and not be put away?
The majority of women don't commit crimes, like they're non-violent crimes, and when they do commit crimes, it's through poverty.
Where, Rebecca,
speaking.
I think you've got a point, is we probably do lock up too many people for non-violent activity.
Yeah.
Be they women or men. We probably shouldn't send people to jail for shoplifting. We should probably financially penalise.
One second. So women want equality, but they don't want to get
No,
put
well,
in
I
prison.
disagree with Rebecca. It should be gender-based.
We have 77,000 men in this country in prison and 3,000, just over 3,000 women. What is the purpose of having women's prisons, which are taking up budget and space, when the majority of them have committed non-violent crimes? The majority of those men are in violent crimes.
Women are innocent.
So the viewers know, earlier you wanted to defund the police, and now you want to get rid of women's prisons so they can just openly go and break the law.
Well, I want to defund the police because it's badly run and it doesn't function. Defunding the police doesn't mean not having any kind of police service. It means restructuring it so that you have psychiatric care, you have social care, so that coppers aren't basically social workers with truncheons. That is a completely different concept.
Affected by violent crime.
I have been affected by violent crime, Adam. Like 1 in 4 women in this country. Like 1 in 4 women in this country, I've been sexually assaulted. Of course I've been affected by violent crime. Don't make assumptions. That is a ridiculous thing to say. And like most women in this country, the police have no interest in dealing with violent crime when women go there. The Met Police have not dealt with a single burglary in the last 3 years. The police doesn't work.
Yeah, that's not a reason to defund them. That's a reason to reprioritise.
That's the same thing.
Yeah.
That's what defunding means.
It's not defunding them.
That is what when
it's to use the money they have got rather more effectively.
Defund means...
So we're all agreed, aren't we?
Defund means restructure.
Violent criminals should be incarcerated.
Of which
whether they are
very few are women.
And I agree they are predominantly men.
Yeah.
They should be incarcerated. Violent criminals and dangerous people who are not British nationals should be deported.
Yeah.
We're all agreed.
Yeah, I don't think anyone is arguing about that.
OK, and crucially, just to bring us right back to where we started, as it currently stands, Keir Starmer, in my view, by omitting this from the King's speech today, despite it being briefed out earlier, has come to the astonishing realisation that we actually can't deport those people, even if he wanted to, which he might not want to.
And the taxpayer is on the hook for £500 million a year because of these foreign criminals in our prison system.
Lovely stuff. Great. All right, OK, well... Welcome to Britain, eh? Coming up, I bring you a very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Plus, Labour MP Rosie Duffield has slammed her primary school for having pupils pose with trans-inclusive pride flags. Why are they feeding gender ideology to our young kids? My panel, they're split on that, and they'll give their views soon. But first, is Labour right to announce plans to renationalise the railways today in Starmer's King's speech? We're going to be debating that. It's also an issue about whether or not now unions have a heck of a lot more power as well. The railways are bad at the moment. Could it all get a heck of a lot worse? Stay tuned.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
I'm joined now by royal biographer and former royal photographer, Ian Lloyd. Ian,
hello, Jacob. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for joining me. This is going to be great, isn't it? The opportunity to go around and see where the King comes onto the balcony from. Really interesting insight to how Buckingham Palace works.
It's exciting. I went yesterday, there was a press preview, and the thing that struck me first of all is that if you're the king and or the late queen and you're on the balcony, you can't see the Mall. I mean, we all see people coming down from the top, thousands of people crowding in towards Buckingham Palace. They can't see it because of this great monument to Queen Victoria called the Queen Victoria Memorial, or they call it the wedding cake, but it blocks the view. So apparently the king has a TV in there. And the late Queen did as well. So what they do is they when they're waiting to come on, they're watching the TV to see how the crowd's getting nearer the palace. And the other thing that struck me is when we were on it looking down, is you can actually see individual faces in the crowd out there because we looked out, So they do get a good view of what's happening directly underneath the palace,
So they can see individuals. So if there's a friendly face in the crowd, they can see that person and possibly even wave. But they can't see that enormous mass of people you get at the big events that goes back towards Admiralty Arch.
The other thing I learned is there's a great historical link because the person that put the east wing on the palace, because it was originally 3 sides, and Queen Victoria had, of course, 9 children, so they had to build a 4th side for all the nurseries and things. Edward Blord was the architect, but the master builder was Thomas Cubitt.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, in amongst the flurry of new bills and legislation announced in the King's speech today, Sir Keir Starmer has pledged to renationalise the railways as part of a major reform of public transport. But there's a lot more to it than meets the eye, because a new body, Great British Railways, will be set up to manage the rail network with the existing rail companies brought under public control when their current contracts expire. But the renationalisation, easy for me to say, of the railways, paired with Labour's plans to hand more powers to the unions, will leave us at the mercy of Mick Lynch and co, as well as the old work-shy cabal of strikers. Look, get ready for strike Starmageddon, people. While union barons will have celebrated the new legislation, industry leaders have raised concerns. Look, is Starmer's government right to renationalise the railways? I'm joined now by Labour Party activist Susie Stride and the Director of Public Policy and Communications at the Institute for Economic Affairs, Matthew Lesh. Both of you, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. First things first, Matthew, let's just deal with the actual functioning of the railways, OK? Do we think that renationalisation of the railways will work? I mean, they are currently awful.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has doubt that the railway system as it currently stands is not functioning well. But the question here is, does state ownership actually achieve anything? Does it lead to a better service? Does it lead to better and more amicable industrial relations? I think there's a big risk it could have the opposite effect by putting bureaucrats in charge with little incentive to deliver for customers. It could, as you've already said, empower the unions because they'll be able to strike across the whole system. At the moment, they might strike franchise by franchise in different parts of the country, but if all the drivers are just employed by the same nationalised entity, then you can have strikes on an even bigger scale, and that means even bigger industrial disputes. We saw when trains were last nationalised, prior to the privatisation, there was a huge dip in passenger numbers and the quality of the system. We already have parts of the railway system, like the East Coast Main Line, that are nationalised. They're not performing that well. It's a similar story in Germany for nationalised trains. They've been beset by delays and strikes as well. Nationalisation does not inherently fix any problems faced by the system.
All right, Susie, look, I mean, the trains themselves might function, but if the people don't want to work on them, then that's a problem, isn't it? Are we just handing a load of power here to people like Mick Lynch?
But there is a much bigger picture here. Are we happy with our trains? It's a really simple question, simple answer. People are not happy. Often delayed, cancelled. It's not acceptable. And I mean, I'd ask the other commentator here, what do you want us to leave it as it is? Are we happy with how it's been for the last 10 years? It's a disgrace. And for me, I mean, look, I often see the bigger picture. I look at this country and I think this is a great country. Okay, we created the trains. I'm like, I want to be proud of this country. And like, you look at our train system and actually, it's unreliable, it's inefficient, it's everything we don't want it to be. So I'm like, hey, let's give this a go. Now, let's come back in a year's time, and if you're not seeing good results, that's fine. But what I think is a little bit, I'm not a pessimist, I'm not optimist. I'm also someone that likes to find solutions. And I think you're going to struggle to find train customers that are not welcoming this news. I got a train back from the north last year, 8-hour delay. 8 hours.
No, look, Susie, I get it. Honestly, I get it. I mean, the times that I've had to go back up north on the train, I've stopped bothering now. I'll just drive, because I might get back up north. I've got no idea if I'm coming back down again, and I might miss work. And no, I hear you. I absolutely hear you. And I think a load of passengers feel the same. I suppose the question really is this the solution, Matthew? Because the concern that I would have is that people in the public sector, they all want an above-inflation pay rise, all right? So whether it's the junior doctors, whether it's teachers, whether it's nurses, whoever else. And they're all gunning for it at the moment. In fact, they've all said it, actually. It was on the front page of The Guardian last week. Well, what's to stop in a nationalised railway system the train barons doing the same thing? And then we have to pay them, don't we? Because we need the trains. And then we have to pay everyone else as well, all the other unions as well. I'm just wondering if the taxpayer knows what's coming for us.
Yeah, I think it could be a complete disaster, and Labour obviously has a lot of sympathies for the unions, and that will end up empowering them. It's worth saying that the majority of the reason why there are delays is not because of the franchises, the privatised part. It's actually because of National Rail. And unless you can fix the issues around National Rail, you're not actually going to fix the system in the first place. But actually, there is a better answer. There is a broader, better answer to what you do. Franchising has achieved something, but I think everyone agrees it's far from perfect. What actually would be a better solution is something called open access. There's already some of this on the system. You have this with Lumo between London and Edinburgh, who provide an alternative service on the lines, often at a cheaper cost and giving consumers a better service. If the government moved away from a franchising system towards a more competitive system, where you have different companies running trains on the same tracks at different times, and you had some proper competition with the system, because I think I agree with you that the franchising system isn't working, and giving a monopoly to one company doesn't really work. So I think there are alternative models. There's actually a lot of open access now going on in across Europe, in Italy, in France, and Spain, that has been shown to be quite effective. And where we have it in the UK, it's quite effective. So I think wherever we can do it for long-distance rail, it's not necessarily everywhere, you want to try to push towards competition.
All right, Susie, what does Keir Starmer do when in 2 years' time, it's the run-up to Christmas, everyone's trying to get home, to celebrate with their families or whatever, and the train union barons go, give us a 10% pay rise or we all take the week off? What happens?
I mean, I'm not so keen on this, I don't know what you want to call it, this kind of simplistic way of looking at the trade unions. The trade union movement, look, I understand part what you're saying, but there's lots of good things about the trade unions. My mum, when I was a kid, was stuck in shelves in the Asda, with no rights, no nothing. And, if she had had a trade union, she would have been better looked after. Hard-working, working-class people being members of trade unions is a positive thing, actually, about this country. So I really come back at that. And actually, I just don't agree with some of this view. It's kind of like a 1980s style view. The junior doctors striking, look, negotiations are going on now, and I think we're going to come into a positive place. A whole lot of the rubbish of all of that is actually the incompetence of the Conservatives and the inability and ineffectiveness of being able to negotiate with junior doctors. What a pity that they weren't able to do that. It's very poor governance. But I don't agree.
All right, but it's the kind of stuff that... I appreciate what you're saying, Susie, genuinely, but to push back on that, the junior doctors currently want a 35% pay rise, right? And so there's only so much wiggle room you can give those people if they decide not to work. I mean, the latest round of strikes by the junior doctors were called after the general election. So, I mean, they couldn't even negotiate with them. We were in an election period, and it's that kind of stuff, isn't it, that makes me wonder whether or not Labour would be able to deal with this if people en masse decided to walk out of our railways. It does it not, just by definition, give more power to people like Mick Lynch, or even more militant people? Mick Lynch is by no means the most militant person who's involved with the unions in the railways.
No, look, you can always read a situation in different ways you want to read it. But my question back to you guys would be, are you happy with the railways? Are people in this country happy with the railways? Is it okay? Are we proud of our railways? I'm not. You think about the Swiss, and the Swiss have the world-leading railways, and they're publicly owned. Let's learn from them, shall we? I think what Keir Starmer's doing is showing leadership. He's showing the fact that we are bringing renewal to this country. This country is in decline. There's no other way of putting it. We're going to turn it around, come back in a couple of years' time. And if what you're saying, the fear, I'm hearing fear, if what you guys are saying is about to pass, fair enough.
I'm fearful. I am fearful. I am fearful about it. Yeah, but we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see. Look, we're going to have to... I'm sorry, guys. We are going to have to knock it on the head because I've got to get to the front pages. But I do really appreciate both of you coming on. Thank you very much. That's Labour Party activist Susie Stride and the Director of Public Policy and Communications at the IEA. It's Matthew Lash. Right, OK, so, yes, when I come back, primary school kids in England are pictured posing with the trans-inclusive pride flag. Why are teachers feeding gender ideology to our kids? We're also going to be telling you a little bit about youth demand as well. GB News did a good thing and helped get a few of them next. But next, my panel returns to bring you a very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Lots of opinion on that. Stay tuned.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Good evening to you. Tomorrow, fine with sunny spells and a bit warmer than today across most of England and Wales. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, things will be a little different. There's high pressure sitting across England and Wales. Low pressure and weather fronts just eking in from the west, bringing cloud and patchy rain at the moment across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. But that rain's going to pep up overnight. It could turn heavy for a time across the west of Northern Ireland and along the west coast of Scotland. A few showers for North Wales maybe, but for most of England, Wales, southern and eastern Scotland, a dry night. Quite a warm night. Temperatures holding up in some towns and cities at 15 or 16 degrees. On to Thursday, and a dull, damp start, certainly for Northern Ireland and western Scotland. But in the south, mostly fine. Could be some morning fog patches around. They may take a couple of hours to clear away, but generally plenty of sunshine across the south. A bit more cloud in West Wales, northwest England, 1 or 2 showers here, and a dull, damp morning for Northern Ireland. And a good part of Scotland seeing cloud and outbreaks of rain. Maybe parts of the east coast escaping largely dry, but even here a few showers may drift up as we go through the morning. So it's a bit of a north-south split with the weather, certainly to start with. I'm hopeful that parts of southern and eastern Scotland will actually turn a bit drier through the morning and stay largely fine. Some brighter skies likely to develop across the Murray coast through the afternoon. Northern Ireland, western Scotland do stay pretty dull and damp. Most of England and Wales seeing plenty of hazy and pretty warm sunshine. 28 in the capital, many places in the mid-20s across the south. By Friday, that heat could build further. We may reach 30 Celsius across the southeast in the sunshine. Again, quite a bit of cloud at times for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but generally a drier day for Northern Ireland. It'll be late in the day before this rain starts to creep in. 1 or 2 showers elsewhere, but most places set fair. As I said, hotter still with maybe 30 Celsius in the southeast.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. It's time to bring you the very first look at tomorrow's front pages. Let's do it. Start with the eye. Avanti is the first rail firm at risk of nationalisation. Look, we've just done a big section on this. So nationalising the railways, I think most people think that the railways are in a pretty dire state, absolutely. But is giving more power to the unions the right answer? I'm not sure. Let's go to the Daily Express. Red Revolution. Bigger state and higher spending. Middle Britain should brace itself for tax increases, the Tories have warned, after Keir Starmer revealed the true scale of his radical big state plans for power. Right, let's go to the Metro. Keir's crown jewels. Key policies revealed in the King's speech. They've picked out Yep, renationalising the railways. Housing to get a boost with planning regulations overhaul. I am telling you this now. The big story about housing is not building on the green belt. It's going to be who is living in that housing. And we're going to be doing a lot on that on tomorrow's show. But major changes to workers' employment rights outlined as well. And also phasing out cigarette sales. So brilliant. I mean, that'll move the dial, won't it? Daily Mail. How will these new burdens on firms help growth? All right. Labour's Red Revolution, extra power for the unions, right to work from home, anti-strike law, more diversity monitoring. So there is a theme on a couple of the front pages. Let's go to The Guardian, see what they make of it. Labour puts growth and planning at heart of promise to fix the UK. Starmer tries to ward off a rebellion with child poverty plan. Yeah, so this is another potential storm looming for Keir Starmer. The child poverty / two-child benefit cap. Essentially, there's a rebellion potentially brewing on this from his backbenches. Yes, he's got a massive majority. He could be about to find out how many of those people are actually on his side or how many people are potentially to the left of where he wants to be. So we'll find all of that out, won't we? I am, as ever, joined by my wonderful press pal, Director of Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. I'm going to whiz us on to a story that's on the inside of some of the papers tomorrow. And it's a primary school in London. Facing criticism after asking kids to pose with a trans-inclusive pride flag. So apparently there are 20 children in the image posted on the school's social media. One of them is seen holding up a sign which reads, "I can't even think straight." Labour MP Rosie Duffield responded, "These tiny children can have no real concept or meaningful understanding of sexuality and gender identity, theirs or anyone else's. They should be left alone to discover these things for themselves and teenagers and young adults, not while still using dummies." Adam, your thoughts on this?
Look, I haven't held back in the past that kids should not be indoctrinated in schools. And things like this progress flag, I mean, it's anything but progress. To me, it signifies the support of the drugging and mutilation of children and supports them, making irreversible changes to their bodies. It supports the erosion of women's rights to single-sex spaces and sport, fairness in sport. For me, children do not need to know about trans issues. Many trans people have mental health issues. It's like we're promoting something that...
Well, that's the
interest.
Can I just ask you on this? Because that is the thing. So, by definition, adults have brought that flag in and given it to those kids, right? I mean, that's almost definitely what's happened there. So is that the promotion of that ideology, Rebecca, onto those?
So I just want to ask Adam, if it were just the gay pride flag, so no trans bit, just the gay pride bit, would you have an issue with that?
No, there's not many people out there that have got a problem with the gay pride flag.
So,
many gay people message me on Twitter saying that they support my view on the progress flag and that it does not represent their community.
So my issue with Rosie's...
hundreds of messages that
my issue with Rosie's
gay pride flag in that scenario, actually.
Why?
Because I think, well, I'm not a parent, but my rough judgment would be that children in the classroom should only be presented with things in all different classes that they can actually understand. And I don't think that children of that age can understand...
But children do know whether they're straight or gay from that age.
Do you think?
Did you not know you were straight from childhood?
I'm not persuaded. I'm not persuaded age 9. I did know whether I was straight.
I think people generally do know whether they are gay or straight as children.
I don't think those kids can possibly comprehend what that is.
But they also do understand their friends have parents who are same-sex couples.
Well, they may, so that's fine.
So they're being influenced by outside
imagery in the classroom, whatever it is.
School is about influencing children. Children arrive at school not knowing about how water gets down from the clouds. We teach children everything they know in school.
Are grounded in scientific fact.
And
the fact that gay people exist is also grounded in fact.
The flag doesn't symbolise that gay people exist.
Yes, that's one of the things that it does represent.
It is called pride. It is called progress. It's not a mere statement of fact. It actually has an ideology behind it.
Well, it's about celebrating the fact that there is a spectrum of sexualities,
children should be celebrating sexuality of any sort.
Why would you not want to celebrate love? One of the main important things.
Again, I don't think 4-year-olds should have sex education
My
classes.
4-year-old
It might
thinks...
be actually true, but
it's not always love, is it?
No.
Let's be honest.
My 4-year-old thinks she's Elsa half the time. You know, she does not know that she would be attracted to boys or girls at the age of 4.
Lots of people do know what their sexuality is in childhood. I've always known I was bisexual. That has always been part of who I am. It doesn't mean that I had I don't remember a time.
I do want to ask this, and I am not. I'm just genuinely intrigued, right? So you're saying that at the age of 3 or 4 years old,
for as long as I can remember,
you knew you were sexually attracted.
I was attracted to. I mean, I think using the word sexual with children is complicated, but yes, from as long as I can remember, I knew I was attracted.
What would the difference be between me knowing at the age of like 3 that I'm friends with boys, or knowing I was sexually attracted to boys?
I think generally speaking it's about how you expect to replicate relationships going forwards, but the majority of gay people I know will tell you I knew my entire life from the absolute outset that I was gay or that I was a lesbian, and I've always known I was bisexual, and but it doesn't mean that I was ready to have relationships. It just means that, like, a lot of people sort of knew inherently that they were straight. You never woke up one morning and went, I think I'm straight. You just sort of grew into it and assumed it.
I think a lot of people think about it. You do something. I think it's something that over a period of time you think about, and then you come to whatever personal conclusion.
I think the idea that 3 or 4-year-olds know if they're gay or straight is utterly ridiculous.
But lots of gay people
don't have sexuality.
But lots of gay people
They
are
don't
telling
have any
you
sexuality about them, kids.
But lots of gay people will tell you that they do remember feeling that way. But if we just park that for a second,
let's depart that, because I do want to ask on this, because do we think that there is a degree of sexuality attached to that flag?
Yes.
Because
the progress flag has been hijacked by a movement which has drag queens and trans people, you know, performing in front of kids, sexualising.
As to pantomimes, you get men dressed as women performing in theatre all over the world. Neither necessarily as drag.
The gay pride flag, I don't know so much about the progress flag. I'm still trying to study it. It gets very confusing.
It's not progressive.
But the gay pride flag is explicitly about sexuality.
It's about relationships.
I don't mind it being about sexuality.
It's also got asexuality in it.
Right, OK, but it's about sexuality.
It's about relationships.
The whole pride movement is about pride in one's sexuality.
Should 4-year-olds or however old...
Well, those children aren't 4 to start with. Also, the idea...
How old are they?
Those children are about 5 or 6.
5 or 6?
Well,
come on.
So they are aware of adults having... 4 and 6... OK, you can tell you guys don't have kids. 4 and 6 are dramatically different. They are completely different.
My cut-off would be 10 or 11.
But they would be aware of different adults.
If that was my kid, I would be kicking off massively.
Yeah,
I'd be kicking off because...
I would probably take them out of that school if I found out that was one of my...
I'd be kicking off because those children should not be... In the original picture, those children's faces are not blurred. An MP thought it was appropriate to take a picture of children without their parents' consent and share it on the internet to hundreds of thousands of people. That's what Rosie Duffield should feel bad about. That is completely inappropriate.
Rosie Duffield is a hero to me, the way she kicks back against this gender ideology.
Those children have the right not to have privacy, not to be pictured.
Anyway. Whether the image should have been shared is a separate issue.
All right. We're gonna rattle on, because the spokesperson for the school said, as a school with LGBTQ parents, we celebrate Pride by allowing our children to attend in non-uniform. All our personal, social and health teaching is in line with the national curriculum. Right, shifting tone now. King Charles was, of course, setting out the Labour government's plans and priorities at the King's speech earlier. But to get to Parliament, he had to drive through these Republican rabble-rousers. I just wouldn't care. Surprisingly, I don't think I was able to spot Clive Lewis among that lot, but there we go anyway. And now, just quickly, to a victory for GB News. Right, after our exclusive reporting saw pro-Palestine and anti-climate change and goodness knows what else this week, youth demand protesters arrested by police today before they could allegedly try to sabotage the King's speech. So the Metropolitan Police arrested 10 members of the action group in Westminster, leading to these scenes.
Been arrested today for public nuisance, for conspiracy to cause a public nuisance.
Now you're going to be using your...
All I attempted to do, wanted to go and do, was wave a Palestinian flag at the state opening of Parliament.
Our government should be the ones that are in prison right now. They should be the ones in the cells. They are committing war crime. They should be arrested, not me.
Oh. Coming up, Microsoft has fired its diversity, equality and inclusion team. So, is woke on the way out? We debate that in tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass, and I will finally tell you what this person is prattling on about.
It's a pistol crossbow. I don't like firearms. This is a much safer alternative.
It's an insane clip, and I bring it to you next.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It was also announced that the Prince of Wales is set to star in a new two-part documentary on ITV covering his mission to try and eradicate homelessness.
Well, let's talk about this and much, much more with Angela Levin, royal biographer, who joins us in the studio. I'm glad to hear that this documentary's been made, Angela, because I worried that he made this big announcement about homelessness, and I thought, goodness me, here is somebody who could maybe do something about this. And then it's all seemed to have gone quiet.
He's been very busy with it, actually. He's gone all over the country to see different areas and how they have been, and to try and change people's attitude to homelessness, that they're people who need help and want to get back into a normal life, and he's there to do it. I mean, we mustn't forget that in, I think it was 2009, he slept out in the street to see for himself what it was like. And he also helps people who are selling the magazine...
Big Issue, no?
Yes, The Big Issue. And he's worked all day long with the same man twice now. So I think he was actually just covering the basic about what it was like for him and how he can now help other people. He and Catherine are putting £3 million straight away into that, and it's going to
Where
be...
does that money come from?
Their own foundation, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they're not taking it from our tax or anybody else's, you know. And there will be a lot more. And he's been getting the money to do this. And I think it's he wants to do this so badly because of his mother. You know, she took them to see people who were homeless.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. I've got some more front pages for you. Going to start with the Mirror, taking back control, they say. The Keir way. Pledges on workers' rights. It's all about the King's speech. OK, so the Telegraph, Starmer unveils big state Britain. Nationalisation, new rights for workers, more power to unions. They've also got Labour firing the starting gun on a reset relationship with Europe. And it's on that I actually go to the Times now. PM seeks deal with Europe on migrants. Arrivals may go back if UK takes asylum seekers. Who could have seen this coming? Oh, everyone, we all did. Sir Keir Starmer will begin to push a new secure deal with Europe on migration today when he attempts to reset Britain's relationship with the EU. He's hosting a summit in Oxfordshire. EU diplomats expect Starmer to use a private meeting with Macron to push a potential agreement to send back small boats migrants in return for accepting a number of asylum seekers from Europe. Mark, we all said this was going to happen. It's happening, isn't it?
It is happening. And look, this, I think, is actually going to be one of the big dividing lines in British politics over the next coming years. ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, is the new Brexit. And if you delve down into this article, Starmer's going to remind the foreign dignitaries that Britain under Churchill was an early proponent of the European Convention on Human Rights. That is true, post-Holocaust, and will commit the UK to abiding by international law after years dominated by rows over Brexit and Rwanda. Here's the issue, and you can pick a lane. There are arguments to be made on either side. Do you think Britain should actually operate its own immigration and asylum policy? Or do you think we should throw our lot in with the continent of Europe, at which point you get horse trading about, well, the French stop this if we do that, if you send 10,000
well, it's
people our way?
better than giving them loads and loads of money to do absolutely sweet FA, which is what we've been doing for the last time. At least if we're friends with them, we can...
However you make the policy work, the strategies you've got is either to be part of Europe on this or independent.
But being independent hasn't gone well.
You could be foolish in delivery or brilliant in delivery either way.
If we did that, right, and then there was an even bigger surge of illegal immigration into Europe, then we're on the hook for an even bigger quota.
Let me just tell you what most people will have the ump about, is that whatever this deal means, we're still getting more people coming to this country. There's no room. Our services are broken. The taxpayer is on the hook for every one of these that comes over. We want it to stop. We don't want more.
Do you not think
You would take this. Do you think this deal's probably better than what we've got now?
What we've got at the moment doesn't work. And if we can have more people, if we can have more women, more children, rather than young economic migrant men, which is what people seem to be crossest about in this country, if we can perhaps have people have political asylum from countries that we feel better aligned with, if we can be a bit choosier, and also crucially, the fingerprinting system will make a massive difference because it's much easier to not lose
Rebecca,
people.
there's nowhere the Italians and the French and the Germans are going to say, tell you what, you have all the women and children, and we'll have all the young men.
Well, it depends, because there's also...
Right, guys, we're just because I want to squeeze a couple of other bits and bobs in, and this is obviously we're going to have a huge amount of time to talk about this in the coming day, I imagine, and probably years. But now, after Trump's attempted shooting, President Joe Biden called for all Americans to just cool down the political temperature. But this radical lefty doesn't seem to have got the message. See if you can spot the irony in some of their comments.
Can I get your reaction to what happened the other day?
Well, it's a shame the person missed. I am scared about political violence.
You're scared of political violence, but you were hoping that he wouldn't have missed.
Yes.
I see you have a crossbow over here. Can you tell me a little bit more about it and why you decided to bring it here? You have I don't know what it is. It looks like a crossbow.
Yeah, it's a pistol crossbow. I don't like firearms. This is a much safer alternative, and it's used only for personal defense as an absolute last resort.
That makes perfect sense. It's time now to whiz straight into Greatest Britain Union Jackass. Mark, your Greatest Britain, please.
Yeah, we may have lost the Euro final, we may have Socialist Britain, but I'm going to nominate Queen Camilla. It's her 77th birthday. There will forever be an England.
All right, good start.
Mine is honouring its Microsoft for getting rid of its DEI team. Have we seen wokeness finally eradicated from Silicon Valley?
I believe... Was that right? We've got a clip? Yeah.
We want to acknowledge that the land where the Microsoft campus is situated was traditionally occupied by the Sammamish, the Duwamish, the Snoqualmie, the Suquamish, the Muckleshoot, the Snohomish, the Tulalip, and other Coast Salish peoples since time immemorial.
That's how they started a Microsoft meeting. It's interesting because now that land is not going to be occupied by them anymore because they've just been sacked. So, good. Right, who's your Greatest Britain?
Mine's a three-way nomination between Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner because they were at PMQs really chatting nicely. And I just thought you wouldn't see that in American politics. You wouldn't see Biden and Trump having a gentle chat in the lobby. And I love that from us.
Although I do resent massively the imagery that you led in with that.
I'm really sorry that I said that.
It's in my head now. So, OK, today's winner is Microsoft for getting rid of the DEI lot. Right, OK, so Union Jackass, please.
Only a few days into socialist bureaucratic Britain and already the bureaucrats are running out of control. You had it on your programme earlier, Patrick. You were speaking to Sammy Wilson about it. Sue Gray.
OK.
What power has she got? Who is she? 300 million on a football stadium we don't need.
I just fundamentally do not get that story. I don't get the situation. I am waiting for more to emerge from it, and I'm willing to accept that maybe there is. Because obviously, as I'm at pains to say, Sue Gray denies the allegations that anything untoward has happened. However, it's a bit weird, isn't it? I just don't get it. Anyway, Adam, who's your Union Jackass?
Mine is David Aronovich for his viral tweet about Biden getting Donald Trump murdered. And it's also all the vile lefties that have shown the hypocrisy over the last few days since the Trump assassination.
It's all right. It gets us all, that one. Don't worry. And Rebecca, who's your Union Jackass, please?
Mine is the Met. They have failed to identify a single suspect in 166 London neighbourhoods for 3 years for a single burglary. Not one person has been arrested for a burglary.
That is insane.
In 3 years. If you get burgled, the Met just say, oh, soz.
But honestly, I don't understand why any of us buy anything now.
Let's hope it isn't women. Let's hope it isn't women.
It's not women, Adam. That's fundamentally not women aren't doing burglaries.
We don't know. We haven't caught any of them.
We're too busy sorting everything else out.
Stop it, all of you. Today's winner, Union Jackass, is David Aronovich. Right, OK, well, it's been a lively show. I'm certainly ready for a lie down. Thank you very much, everybody. I have really enjoyed it. Great to have you all on the show. And thank you, most importantly, for everybody who's been watching and listening. I'll be back again tomorrow at 9 p.m. Keep it GB News, though, because headliners are up next with a more detailed look through all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. I'll see you tomorrow at 9.
A
brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Good evening to you. Tomorrow, fine with sunny spells and a bit warmer than today across most of England and Wales. But for Scotland and Northern Ireland, things will be a little different. There's high pressure sitting across England and Wales. Low pressure and weather fronts just eking in from the west, bringing cloud and patchy rain at the moment across western Scotland and Northern Ireland. But that rain's going to pep up overnight. It could turn heavy for a time across the west of Northern Ireland and along the west coast of Scotland. A few showers for North Wales maybe, but for most of England, Wales, southern and eastern Scotland, a dry night. Quite a warm night. Temperatures holding up in some towns and cities at 15 or 16 degrees. On to Thursday, and a dull, damp start, certainly for Northern Ireland and western Scotland. But in the south, mostly fine. Could be some morning fog patches around. They may take a couple of hours to clear away, but generally plenty of sunshine across the south. A bit more cloud in West Wales, northwest England, 1 or 2 showers here, and a dull, damp morning for Northern Ireland. And a good part of Scotland seeing cloud and outbreaks of rain. Maybe parts of the east coast escaping largely dry, but even here a few showers may drift up as we go through the morning. So it's a bit of a north-south split with the weather, certainly to start with. I'm hopeful that parts of southern and eastern Scotland will actually turn a bit drier through the morning and stay largely fine. Some brighter skies likely to develop across the Murray coast through the afternoon. Northern Ireland, western Scotland do stay pretty dull and damp. Most of England and Wales seeing plenty of hazy and pretty warm sunshine. 28 in the capital, many places in the mid-20s across the south. By Friday, that heat could build.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
King Charles has launched his own aftershave, costing, wait for it, an eye-watering £135 for a 100 millilitre bottle, promising buyers that they can smell just like the gardens of his Highgrove country pile. Now, this is something that Meghan Markle would do, surely not the King. Is this a case of King Charles selling out, watering down the brand just like Meghan? Well, join me now to discuss this is the royal broadcaster Helena Chard. Helena, welcome to the show.
Martin,
often on this
hi.
show, we've had a pop at Meghan Markle, the Sussexers, for selling out, for flogging strawberry jam, and now the King is flogging Pong. Is this really the right royal thing to do?
Do you know what? So the joy of a luxury Highgrove splash, you know. At the end of the day, Highgrove is such a special place, and the Highgrove shop sells amazing things on there. And as we know, the profit actually goes towards charity. So it's the King's Foundation, which was formed in 1986. Profits go towards educational and training